Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. It's been a week since we last did a wee chat on here. Nice to have you back. Hope you and yours are all well. Been another interesting week, lots happening, lots for us to discuss, lots for us to debate. And I'm sure you're looking for a lot of answers. So without further ado, let me get in the troops. We haven't got Phil this week because he's, as we speak, is halfway across the Atlantic on his way to sunny Spain. So he won't be joining us today, but not to worry. We have with us, we have Neale Hanvey MP.
Hi, Roddy.
Hi, Neale. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Yourself?
Good. Life's just a bowl of cherries. I should have a twin to share my joy. I really should. And also we've got there in Clickmannanshire, our Eva.
Hi, Roddy.
Hi, Eva. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm in good nick today, thanks. I've been in the garden most of the day, so I'm up to my knees in muck, and I've planted 5 fruit trees. Well, my slaves planted 5 fruit trees. I just issued some instructions, and I've more stuff still to do. So all is good in Alba.
Excellent. And then down there in the borders, we have our award-winning Dr. Yvonne Ridley.
Hi, Roddy.
Hi, Yvonne. Hello. Good evening. And how are you?
Well, you can forget about Boris Johnson's honours list. Look at this.
Yes, we have to congratulate you. You got a Woman of the World award.
Yeah.
The WOW Award for your work in war zones and journalism. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, it was quite a surprise.
Well done. Congratulations to you.
But yeah, it's. I wasn't expecting it. Not like poor Nadine Dorris. She was holding out for a peerage that didn't happen, and now she's created a by-election in a fit of pique.
We're going to be discussing that. That's
Don't
worry about it. But congratulations, and I hope you don't think this means you get a bigger dressing room or anything like that. That's not going to happen.
Well, I was hoping I might get a spangly star on the door.
Well, we can maybe do that. But we've also got a newbie today, which we always get excited and enjoy a newbie. And it's a famous film director, someone who's directed 14 feature films, and is what's known as the Sundance darling. And if you're not aware what Sundance is, it's a very big festival, and she's a darling of there. Has acted even in Glow and Girls, and in Peter Mullen's film, Ned's. And I am delighted to welcome Marianna Palka.
Hiya, Roddy.
Hiya,
Hi,
Marianna. Welcome to Through a Scottish Prism.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, no, it's a pleasure. We don't normally get, Hollywood stars coming on to the Prism show.
Well, I'm in Glasgow just now. I'm in Finniston. So.
Well, I mean, if you're looking for a leading man for your next big production, I am available. And most importantly, I am cheap. Ask the guys, they'll tell you. I am very cheap. I am. So welcome. But I know you have a great love for Scottish independence and Scottish politics. And you've been, like your parents put you into the SNP when you were still a toddler.
When I was an embryo, basically, because my dad met Alex Salmond when he came into his business in the 80s. And my dad came home and told us all about him. And I was like, I'm joining the SNP as soon as I can. So I joined as soon as I possibly could. But my mum also gave me the Wee Blue Book, and I remember reading that, and we read that at the dinner table. So we've been mad, for Scottish independence ever since we heard about it. We thought it was the best thing ever, and we're in Glasgow, so everyone wants independence in Glasgow.
Well, indeed. Well, if you're mad and you like Scottish independence, you're in the right place.
That's me, yeah.
Because we're all mad here.
I know. I'm like really into changing no voters to yes voters. That's what I'm here for, That's what I get up in the morning to do.
That's what we need. We need lots of that. So It's been a hell of a week, guys. But I want to start quickly, Neale, on the SNP special conference. Now, we've spoken about it on here before, how the date's unfortunate when it clashes with the All Under One banner. But to compound it, this special conference, which was put off from March after Nicola's resignation, they chose that weekend, no coincidence. But when they go to this, the SNP delegates there's no brand motions, there's no amendments, there's no vote, there's going to be no policy. What is the point of this at all, if not just to thwart all under one banner?
Well, it's hard to really understand from a strategic point of view, from a party point of view, what the purpose is, because this type of event really is an opportunity for the leadership of any party to listen to its members and to take cognizance of their views in a way that you can demonstrate some form of democratic process has been conducted, and then you can move things along. And we've done that in the Alba party since its inception with our National Council and a variety of different assemblies where the purpose has been pretty clear. It's been about a specific topic, and we've sought to get at least an informed response from the participants about the direction and the purpose. The difficulty for the SNP is that they've called this a convention. There isn't any mechanism within their constitution for a convention in terms of its democratic processes to actually do anything. So I don't know what, in terms of the strategic direction of their strategy for the constitutional future, let me just put it that way, the constitutional future of Scotland, it's pretty unclear what its purpose is. I think Joanna Cherry has probably provided the best take on it, if you like, which is, well, if we're going to meet, we may as well meet and have a conversation about the best way forward, and hopefully all voices will be heard. My concern is that the level of command and control that was brought in under Sturgeon's rule will be allowed to continue, and therefore certain voices will be stifled or kept off the stage. Thinking particularly of Ash Regan and her clear desire when she spoke to you a few weeks ago, Roddy, that interview, she made it clear that she wanted to get on the stage, she wanted to use that opportunity for debate. And I think that if SNP members who do choose to go to this event instead of the Stirling March go and find that it actually is the damp squib that it might turn out to be, if it is just a command and control exercise, that's not going to help the SNP as a party, never mind the independence cause and its strategy. So and to get back to your question, I don't know what the purpose is. I hope that members find a way to make it useful and purposeful, but certainly from a strategic perspective, I don't know what the objective is here.
No, I mean, if the branches nor the constituencies can put up motions or amendments, and there's to be no vote and no decision taken on what the actual policy will be, if you're an ordinary member, what's the point of even turning up? Really, seriously, I mean, there's...
Well, exactly. And that fundamental point of where does it fit in the constitutional arrangements of the party? Well, it doesn't, because it effectively doesn't exist if it's not in the constitution. And so therefore, if it's not in the constitution, how could any member or branch submit anything to it? Because it's not part of the party's business. I don't understand what it's for.
Well, call me a cynic if you like, but I believe it's for cutting the legs away from all under one banner. They saw 20,000-30,000 people marching through Glasgow. They're not controlling it. But then again, I am a cynic, but that's the way I view it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be foolish for anyone to genuinely believe that this was somehow an unfortunate coincidence. It's not coincidental.
No, absolutely, it's not.
Very, very upsetting that they've chosen to do that, given the fantastic march and rally that we had in Glasgow.
Indeed. And I hope a lot of SNP people watching this will make the decision and go to something that is going to be worthwhile and beneficial. Because Eva, with no decision coming till October, again, this is more kicking the can down the road. It just seems all they ever do is kick the can down the bloody road.
It's really quite interesting to see how this is developing, though. And Neale mentioned there a couple of times, what is the strategic direction of the SNP? We know what it is. It's not even at a standstill anymore. They're going backwards. They're in reverse gear.
Mm-hmm.
And if any proof of that was required, all you have to do is look at the press releases that surrounded Nicola Sturgeon's announcement of what has now become the postponed March conference. She called that a conference, and she said that there would be options for the party to debate, because the function of the conference, and I'm quoting Nicola Sturgeon, was the conference was being asked to consider options to advance the right of the people of Scotland to choose the form of government which, in the words of the claim of right, is best suited to Scotland's needs. And there were to be two options put before the conference. One was that the next general election would be treated as a de facto referendum if more than 50% of the electorate were to vote for the SNP or for other independent supporting parties. That would be a mandate to begin to negotiate the terms of independence. The second option was for the vote to be taken as indicative of support for a second referendum and for what Neale's self-determination bill provides, which is for the transfer from Westminster to Holyrood of the right to hold an independence referendum. Now, it's abundantly clear that these two options, which were not particularly palatable to me at the time that Nicola Sturgeon was at the helm, these two options apparently are no longer available, because instead we're going to have a talking shop, which, as Neale has pointed out already, does not have the powers of a conference. It's almost just an invention where people can chat to each other and, as you said, kick the can further down the road at the very point in time when our people are afraid, we're scared, we're skint, we're worrying about the bills that are, firing onto the mat come winter time again. You're looking at some places empty food shelves, proliferation of food banks running out of stock because the people that used to help to fill them can no longer afford so to do. Issues to do with parents worrying about new school uniform come the summer term, etc. and wondering what to do with their kids over the summer when school meals are not available, when we've got budgets that are ravaged because, millions of pounds have been spent on schemes that are not going to go ahead as timed, if ever. You know exactly what I'm referring to, that at the moment we are being governed by fools who think that they can continue to dupe the electorate when the answer is in their hand the whole time. All Hamza has to do, as we've said so many times before, is just lift the phone and dial Alec and talk to him about Scotland United. Everybody knows that's what he should be doing. If he can't bring himself to do it just now, he should be doing it on the eve of the 24th of June event and turn that day into a declaration, both at Bannockburn and in Dundee, that the Yes movement actually will be united. It would be a good day for a big declaration, given that it's the anniversary of Bannockburn, when the small folk won because they were united and Scotland fought as one. That was a fight for their lives. This year it's going to be a fight for our political lives in Scotland, for everybody that's in the independence movement.
Yvonne, it kind of all keeps adding up. There's a lot of the SNP people, and we'll come into it in greater depth shortly, but they're all talking about defending devolution. They're talking about, we've got to, protect our devolution and what we've got. They're not really talking about independence.
No, well, there's just no pretense left now. It's gone. And the All Under One Banner March is the most important date on the independence calendar at the moment. That's where we've got to be. Whoever we are, whichever party we belong to, that is where we have to be on that day. And, I do keep saying that I feel sorry for the SNP members because, you know, there's a lot of decent people. Well, if you're still in the SNP, there's something wrong. You need to get off the meds and get out and join us on the All Under One Banner March, because the SNP is going nowhere at the moment. It was the party that won elections. Those days have gone. We all know that. Everybody's rubbing their hands with glee at the prospect of a by-election in Scotland, because the SNP's days of winning have gone. They've lost the trust of the people. They're talking devolution now instead of independence. And apart from a few exceptional voices like Ash Regan, Joanna Cherry, there's nothing in the SNP that is exciting, that is progressive. It's suddenly just gone very old and decrepit and unimaginative, and the game's up. You know, we see you. The pretense is over, and we have warned them for months on this show about the writing on the wall. They've just chosen to ignore us, when in fact we were telling them things that even their closest aides were too afraid to say. So, you know, the days of the SNP have gone. The only place to be now is on the All Under One Banner March. That is the future, because people will deliver independence, not a political party. And every independence movement historically has needed a rallying figure. And I would say that figure now is the de facto leader of the independence movement, Alex Salmond.
Not that you're biased.
Of course I'm biased, but
we all are here.
But most of us have seen the other side. We've been on the other side. We've paid our subscriptions. We paid money to a fraudulent fund promising to deliver independence. We've all been on the dark side, and you know, now we've moved over. And I've got nothing personal against people who've remained with the SNP. Loyalty is a good thing, but blind loyalty is damaging.
Marianna, could it be a case of, you know, the SNP, let's be honest here, now been in power for 16 years. Mm-hmm. Are they in so much inside a bubble now that they've lost touch with not just their membership, but the voters and the reality of what's going on? Are they too cushioned, do you think?
Well, the fact that we all wanted independence, and the fact that, you know, Scotland voted for independence already in the 70s. Like, this is a joke. Like, we've done it already. So we've all been waiting for so long, and I wanted it before I was born. You know, I wanted it to happen before 1981 when I was born. And I do think that we were all going for unity. The thing that was incredible about the independence movement, and is still incredible about the independence movement, is the unity, because that's what freaks Westminster out. That's what gets us independence, is the fact that we're all in it together. Like, my Scottish socialists, my Green pals, my Alba party pals, they're all pals with me, and we all talk about independence in the same way. And it's the beautiful thing about being Scottish, and it's the thing that's getting us there, you know. And I went to the All Under One Banner March. I went to all the marches for independence originally as well, and I would speak and pure cry about why I want Scotland to be independent. But I'm going to announce just now that I'm leaving the SNP. I'm just going to put my member card in the bin tonight, and I'm probably going to join the Alba party.
I wonder if I could speak to Taz about getting some commission here for people joining up. What do you think, Neale? It's really fair. Well, you'll be very welcome.
With a 99 or a slush puppy or something like that.
Well, you have to join. There is a rule within it's not till you join that you have to buy members of the NEC Gin and Tonics if you join. It's a kind of it's an unwritten rule. It's there. Fine. We all know about it. Welcome, Neale. On a less happy note, as you indicated earlier, you went down this week to vote on the Margaret Ferrier suspension. Techie, could you stick up the 14 friends? These people, I don't know what to describe them as, Neale, but you don't turn on your own, is what I would say. And they turned on one of their own. And we've said it on here before, one of the hardest working members in the SNP for years. You know yourself, if there was a by-election in Wick on a Thursday, she was there. If it was next Friday down in the Borders, she was there and doing and she's been betrayed and let down badly.
Yeah, and when you reflect on some of the behaviours that have been uncovered in the SNP that have not only been tolerated, some of them, there's been attempts to cover it up, and the one that immediately springs to mind is Patrick Grady's sexual harassment of a young boy, and the rallying cry from Blackford et al. That they should get behind Patrick Grady, and not a word of support for the victim. And I'm aware of the details in that case, not anything that I will go into, but that's emblematic of the culture, the toxic culture that exists in that group. If your face fits, then it seems that any behaviour will be tolerated and accommodated. And if your face doesn't fit, they will find anything to jump on you for. I've been jumped on by them a couple of times, and thankfully I've lived to tell the tale. But Margaret, what's happened to Margaret is an absolute travesty because, she broke the rules. There's lots of people who've broken the rules, not least the former Prime Minister and the current Prime Minister. Both of whom had fines because they broke COVID rules. And I think we've only scratched the surface of what really went on there. Margaret took a train home. She was in a state of distress. She'd just been given a diagnosis that would, I think, strike fear into any of our hearts at that time when it happened. And, I've worked with people who've had really tough diagnoses, cancer diagnoses in my professional career, and I know that when people get that, they can't think straight, and so to hold her to some imaginary standard that is insulated from the impact of that diagnosis is ludicrous. And I think the reality is that at that time, the Peter Murrell WhatsApp messages had been leaked. We had a First Minister embattled and under pressure because the veneer of no collusion to try and imprison Alex Salmond was beginning to crack. It was being challenged, and I think Margaret was just a convenient scapegoat to throw to the wolves. And tragically, she's now a convenient scapegoat for the Labour Party to use for political expediency to try and flex their muscles north of the border. And the SNP have gifted them that opportunity, because the SNP, whilst they may have been confident at the time that they suspended Margaret and got the knives out for her, it's very unlikely, certainly in the West Coast, as the SNP in the current political climate, that they will do well in this election. And we've now gifted Keir Starmer, a man who can't define what a woman is, the opportunity to come to Scotland and win a seat on the back of comments from his party that they're quite happy to take, continue to rob Scotland of its renewable energy resources to provide tax cuts for council tax in England. It's a ludicrous situation, and for the SNP to facilitate that is just beyond the pale. One thing I would say, the rogues list of MPs that you put up, there's one question that I've got about that rogues gallery rather, and that's Alan Dorrance. Now, Alan voted against the sanction at committee, yet his name and face appear next to that vote, but he wasn't in Parliament. So there's a question about whether his vote was cast by proxy, and it seems a little bit strange that he would change so firmly to the complete opposite of what he voted in the committee. So I've got a bit of trouble with that. That's just, just a sense that I've got. I haven't had a conversation with Alan about it. I think it's been quite poorly. So, and I wouldn't disturb him. But it's interesting. And the other side, of course, I did some media and drive time with John Beattie straight after the vote, or early that evening. And David Linden was asserting that every single SNP MP that was on the estate voted in the, against Margaret, or voted for the sanction. And that is just simply not true, because I sat beside another MP who, during the vote, while the vote was taking place in the chamber, who was refusing to vote. Now, whether I agree with that position or not, they decided they wanted to abstain. I think in a situation like that, abstention is just not good enough. Defend your colleague, defend them from an absolutely, disproportionate sanction, and show a bit of spine. It was just a terrible, terrible experience. I really feel for Margaret. When I was a candidate in a local election, she turned up, she worked her backside off for that election. She's an absolute stalwart of the movement, and for her to be treated like this is an absolute disgrace.
I agree. David Linden, in his defence, maybe he was distracted by his friend in the Labour Party who was sitting beside talking to, and he didn't notice. See, it's not just women, it can be catty folks, I mean, men can be catty too. But am I not right, while you're there, Neale, Peter Gibson, the Tory MP, did the exact same thing as Margaret, and he got nothing at all.
Well, that is the obvious issue. So the SNP decided to make an example out of Margaret Ferrier, but when Peter Gibson took the train home to Darlington, they said nothing. They were silent on a Conservative member of Parliament doing exactly the same thing, and were gunning for Margaret throughout. It's not just the accusation, it's not just the losing of the whip. It is the hostility towards you from that group of people once you're been put out in the cold. They don't look at you, they don't speak to you. Not all of them. The usual suspect or usual friends are as reasonable as ever. But those at the top of that group are absolutely ruthless and heartless. It's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible experience. And I really feel for Margaret. She did not deserve any of this. No,
it's not a good look either, Eva, is it, when they turn on one of their own like that?
No, but I mean, for the Conservatives to be the party that stood by their MP and the SNP to be the ones who stuck the knife in, that tells you a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Eva, I mean, we're old-timer SNP, but as I say, it never happened in the old days. You don't turn on one of your own, and it just is not a good look.
It's one of Phil Boswell's favourite words, isn't it? Betrayal. It's not your enemies who betray you, it's the betrayal that comes from within the camp that you thought you were a loyal and trusted and worthy member of.
Yeah.
I think the really nasty aspect of this, as Neale has touched on already, is that we see the treatment of others who were as culpable, if not more culpable, in fact, than Margaret. And she isn't even suffering double jeopardy. It's almost a triple jeopardy for everything that's happened to her over and over again, to be repeatedly punished for the same act. She's been tried and convicted and sentenced, and I think that she's probably served her time, because I think she had a community's disposal that she will have completed. So she's done all of that, but now she faces, the censure and the suspension from the House of Commons, followed by a petition that the national newspaper, which is supposed to be the independent support newspaper, seems to be openly promoting. What should have happened is that the SNP should have been speaking to Neale and to Kenny and saying, let's have a united front here, because for all that Margaret has made a mistake, she's one of our own, and we're all equal before the eyes of the law. Boris Johnson and all the others, Rishi Sunak and all the people that went to the parties and hung out with each other when the rest of us were stuck at home, unable to visit, literally dying family and friends or elderly relatives or whatever it was. We will not forget. But Margaret will never forget the way that she's been so very abysmally treated, let down and betrayed by a number of people she helped to elect.
Yes.
She assisted them to be where they are today. Were it not for her, some of them wouldn't be there.
Exactly.
So it is shameful in the extreme. It is not the party that I used to belong to. It has changed beyond recognition. And it was all done as the result, as Neale says, of the cult of personality to divert attention from the difficulties that there were for the occupant of Bute House at that time. But sad is the day when we see that the new occupant is as bad, if not worse, than his predecessor. Scotland can do so much better than this. And this debacle, this fostering promotion of the petition for the by-election and choosing candidates when there is actually no by-election called thus far, it's like dancing on somebody's grave when they're still alive, if that makes sense. It's pathetic, it's embarrassing, and it doesn't serve them well, and it will not garner support for the SNP. What they're doing is sacrificing an independentista, in essence, for a unionist.
Yeah. Well, they've done it before.
Anything worse.
But they've done it before. I mean, they did it when they did their SNP 1-2 at Holyrood, and they did it with the local authorities. They preferred to have unionists. Yeah, exactly. Try to do it to you as well. It's just disgusting. But from a purely political point of view, Yvonne, it was also announced this week that by the Electoral Commission, in the first 3 months of this year, the SNP only received £4,000 in donations. The last few opinion polls have told them that their support is dropping. There's that 12-point gap between those that support independence and those that support the SNP. Now, if you're a political being, the last thing you want is to fight a by-election when things are going against you. It just doesn't even make political sense what they've done to Margaret, does it?
It's absolutely despicable. I mean, at the start of the show, I made reference to Boris Johnson's honours list, and I know you want to talk about it later, but there are people on that list who are going to walk into the House of Lords, who are going to have Sir after their title, who've been knighted or who will be knighted, who were part of Partygate, and they're being rewarded. Some of the most despicable figures in the Tory party who did far worse than Margaret Ferrier are going to be rewarded. And Margaret Ferrier is just being horribly treated. There's no chivalry among the men in that rogue gallery. There's no feminism among the women in that gallery. Those women are a disgrace to the sisterhood, and the men are just despicable. Kicking a woman while she's down. It really makes my blood boil, and I hope that Margaret Ferrier keeps her seat. I hope she stands, and I hope that her hours and hours of service to the people of Rutherglen are rewarded when she is, hopefully returned. What she did, she made a mistake. But look at King Charles. When he was infected, when he knew he had COVID, he went with an entourage of 30 into Scotland. And he knew fine well he was breaking the rules and nothing's happened to him. There are so many ways that she could have been defended. But I mean, how many times are her male colleagues and her female colleagues going to kick her while she's down? They are despicable. And I hope that Techie puts up that list of shame again so we can remember exactly who they are and punish them in the ballot box, because they are a despicable bunch who don't deserve any sort of loyalty shown to them. And of course, Neale is right when he says that Doran resisted a lot of pressure to not to vote for her to be kicked out. But I think that he may well have succumbed to that pressure. And, you know, let's face it, nobody knows how to bully and attack like the SNP. That's what they do.
Yeah, they've been terrible. Marianna, how as you as an ordinary member of the SNP, how did you feel about everything that was happening with Margaret?
Well, I felt very disappointed because I'm a mega feminist. I'm a humanist and a feminist. All my films are feminist. I'm very into the wild female Scottish archetype. That's what I've been doing my whole life, you know. And I feel like my favorite feminists are Scottish men. They really taught me feminism. The most hardcore feminists I know are like Glasgow feminists who are genuinely 100% male. And they really kind of introduced me to that whole concept that you have to really be, we have to be equal, you know. And also, I think it's really been a shame. It's sort of astonishing what has happened. And I feel like there must be some people who are, you know, MI5 agents or something who have infiltrated our situation, because it didn't used to be like this. Like, I just feel like a lot of the people who we thought, what you guys were saying about the people who are the ones we thought we could trust are exactly the ones who have just been incredibly awful to deal with and have basically tried to destroy Scotland on our watch. And so I do think it's time to make as many changes as possible. And I do think that being unified again is the answer. That's what I'm going with for now.
I see Techie's just sent me a message there. The National have deleted an article that Humza was getting a photograph with the person he hopes will be the prospective candidate in Rutherglen, which goes back to Eva's point. It is like dancing in someone's grave before.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, at least the people of Hamilton might just say, no, we're quite happy. We don't want to be collar. Let's hope they do and put a spoke in all their wheels. Neale, moving on somewhat slightly, 2 weeks ago on debate night, when Jim Fairley was on, he got a bit of a flea in his ear from that wonderful lady who made it clear that the people of Scotland, the ordinary voters, are a wee bit fed up with the can kicking and with it not doing things. And then this week on the same programme, Ben McPherson, ex-Labour Party, I should hasten to add, went on and sounded like Gordon Brown with a posh voice, talking Labour devolution, and we've had 25 years and we've got to think about the next 25 years. It was so bad, in fact, that he had to come out the next day to say, well, when I said that, I didn't really mean that. You picked it up wrong when I said that, to try and correct the damage. But was even worse, compounded the next day, our friend from the MP for Perth and North Perthshire was endorsing, saying, well, if we're going to drop it down a gear on independence, you know, let's get it right and let's tell the people about it. I mean, here it is. We're de-emphasising independence as a short-term priority. I need you to explain that to me, Neale. Why would any independentista want to downgrade it for even half a minute? Never mind a short time.
Well, that's not. I want to say something first, which is, Marianna, welcome to the party. I fully endorse your decision, and thanks so much. It's fantastic news. But in terms of the omnishambles, if I can call it that, you know, you don't go down a gear. I'll never go down a gear. The only time to go down a gear is, you know, when you decide to pull out, and that only happens once we've got independence and we've built a new country. There's a huge amount of work ahead. We have to secure independence, and once we've got independence, we have to build proper democratic structures, a robust constitution that enshrines the rights of everybody and protects, more notably recently, but the rights of women and children, and ensures that they are insulated from any creep from any toxic ideology that attempts to disrupt the society that we live in. So, no, I mean, gosh, I don't really pay an awful lot of attention to Pete Wishart, I'll have to say. It's just not really worth my while, because, you know, we said, let's have a convention, and Pete said, no, we can't have a convention. And he's now said, we can't possibly run as Scotland United. So I'm expecting him to send a tweet out in favour of Scotland United in the next couple of weeks. But, you know, Pete's got battles of his own to fight. But in terms of the substantive point, you know, I was surprised by Jim Fairley's performance. I expected more from him. He has been one of the few that put their head above the parapet on the GRR situation. I just felt that I felt he was being very guarded with his words rather than speaking with conviction. Whereas Ben McPherson, to claim that he wasn't speaking with conviction and that he misspoke when he was saying that we should just hang on to devolution for another 25 years, he was speaking with conviction. That's what he really wants. I mean, it was very politically polished, if you like, but there was no mistake there. He knew exactly what he was saying. He knew exactly the message he was giving. And that is reinforced by the Pete Wishart tweet that they are attempting to manage expectations downwards at a time when support for independence is on its way up. And that is utterly unforgivable. Utterly unforgivable. It's not something that I will ever do. It's not the Alba Party's position. Our position is and will always be that Scotland needs independence as an urgent and immediate priority. That is our position. We are all united around that. No ifs, no buts, no Brown-esque mumbo-jumbo from Ben McPherson is going to dissuade me from that mission. You know, I've said this many times. I was elected to carry out a mission on behalf of the Scottish people, which was to secure Scotland's independence. That has never been in doubt in my mind, and anyone who dissuades me from campaigning for independence will be called out, whoever they are, and that included Nicola Sturgeon, Ian Blackford, and all of the rest of them in Westminster when they were, you know, making life difficult for me and making it clear that independence wasn't even on their radar.
But that's still the case, Eva. I mean, we've had, in the recent weeks, we've had Stephen Flynn talking about, we'll fight the general election on domestic issues. We've got Ben McPherson saying, turn it down a gear. We've had Pete Wishart agreeing with him. We're getting told that, you know, there's a tax on devolution. We have to defend our devolution. It doesn't, all that goes back to our first topic. It doesn't all augur well for this independence special conference in June or in October, that they're going to finally come up with an idea, because you know how quick things go, Eva. And by October, you know, we're heading into an election year, not just a few months, and they don't have a strategy. It is incredible for a party that's been in power for 16 years not to have a plan.
Prior to my constituency having an SNP MP, we had Labour MPs for a very long time. And one of them was the infamous Martin O'Neill, later Lord O'Neill. And he's infamous because of the words of his in Hansard, where he says, it is the purpose of the Labour Party to lower the expectations of the people of Scotland. He said it's in Hansard. And he said that, he made that speech while representing Clackmannanshire in the House of Commons. How sad these days are when we see that the SNP, whom we elected to raise the expectations of the Scottish people, are in fact following in the footsteps of one of the feeble 50, Labour, who achieved absolutely nothing, not one iota of progress for Scotland. They couldn't stand up against Thatcher. They did very little against Major, and Scotland went down the toilet pan when the feeble 50 represented us. We are in similar territory now because our politicians elected to deliver independence who represent the SNP are sliding it down the agenda every single day with every speech that they make. There are but a few noble exceptions known to us. We know that's Angus Brendan McNeil, Joanna Cherry, Ash Regan. Sometimes we thought Jim Fairley, and I, like Neale, was surprised and a bit disappointed at his conduct last week, but he can get another chance because he's done well in other respects, especially in relation to the GRR. But what's interesting is that these SNP MPs have the opportunity to support Neale's self-determination bill. It only asks for delivery to the Scottish Parliament of the power to hold an independence referendum. And if the SNP is truly still a party determined to deliver independence, then Neale has given them the opportunity to support him in that bill. If they do not do so, then that, coupled with the very deliberate, as Neale said, polished phrases used by Ben McPherson and Pete Wishart and Stephen Flynn and Mary Black and innumerable others will only confirm what you've seen in Animal Farm in 1984 and all the other predictions. What happens when you have political power? It corrupts. And the SNP is in danger of becoming corrupted simply and solely because they enjoy the trappings of personal power, political power, and the wealth that comes from politics that pretty well very few of these people would be able to achieve out with the political world. Scotland must do better. The SNP must come round to understanding that they do what the people require them to do. They're not there on, charades and play acting, jetting off abroad to get their photos taken dressed in army fatigues as they stand under or beside the Union Jack. Their job is to deliver self-determination to Scotland. And if they will not join with us in Scotland United and make that happen, they will be shoved out of the road for those of us who are determined so to do.
Quite right. I remember, I can't remember his name, it was Jimmy Ray. He was the Labour MP for Lanark, the one who said famously, even if independence was the greatest thing going for Scotland, I would still oppose it. And that's why we thought we've got to get rid of people like that. And we did. But we've not replaced them with much better. They've forgotten, Yvonne. They've forgotten what our Winifred Ewing said. They're settling down. They're not settling up.
Well, I mean, that's something that Prism listeners hear every week about.
You saying I'm boring? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry?
You're saying I'm boring? Is that what you're trying to tell me here?
No, not at all. The more we repeat it, it will finally sink in with those SNP diehards who are still hanging in there. I mean, what are they waiting for? It's like watching somebody in an abusive relationship who is continually bashed up, and they keep saying, well, they're really sorry and they'll change. Well, the SNP is not going to change. It has been, as Marianna said, it has been infiltrated by dark forces. And for anybody who says to me, oh, she's barking mad, I would just say, sorry, look at Northern Ireland and how the MI5 special branch had officers in flaming Belfast where they worked non-stop round the clock to destroy the concept and the dream of a united Ireland. So to think that it couldn't happen over here, well, it could, it has, and it is continuing. And, if you're out there dreaming of independence, you will not get it from the SNP. That is the cold, hard truth. The only way you'll get it is through people's movements like All Under One Banner, which isn't political, and I think that they're savvy enough to spot a cuckoo in the nest. And you know, we're living in perilous times. The British government does not want independence for Scotland. That is quite clear. And there are lots of powerful establishment figures out there who will play whatever dirty tricks they possibly can to stop Scotland from getting independence. Now, we can sit and let them mug us and rob us for our wind, for our oil, for all our energy resources, for our whiskey, for our taxes. They can do all of that. And if we let them, well, it's our fault. We have to stand up and be united and demand independence. They're not going to give it to us, not that easily, but if we have enough numbers to show the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the Green Party, and the Conservative Party that the call for independence is even coming from within their own ranks, we can change things.
Yeah.
But we've got to do it by numbers, and we've got to do it through unity. And unfortunately, the SNP is infected with God knows what, and we can't work with them. It's as simple as that. They say they can't work with us. Well, I say for the sake of our own health and sanity, we cannot let that infected party anywhere near us.
It seems, Marianna, that they're edging closer to just going for the old one more mandate again. We need one more mandate and Westminster can't refuse it. Is that going to wash with the people, do you think?
I don't think so. I met Sean Connery the same night. It was a really good night. It was a night at Edinburgh Castle. I had a film there and I was getting an award from Sean Connery, and Alex Salmond showed me the Stone of Destiny with a lot of other actors in the room and a lot of other people who were seeing it for the first time. And I don't know if you've ever seen it or touched it, but it's sparkly. Like, it's not a normal rock, you know, and it's the equivalent of what I would think Scotland is if you put it in the shape of a stone or the form of a stone. It has its own special gifts and should be its own being in the world. It doesn't have to be beholden to anyone, you know. It's really time, you know, it's been time to unite the clans. And that's what Sean Connery said to me. He was like, that was a good film you made, Palka, but you need to make more films in Scotland that are not just mentioning Scotland, but actually like Scottish films, you know. And I said to him, I will, you know, because he said he didn't want to leave when he left Scotland. He said he had to leave because there wasn't any work. And if he could have stayed and made films here, he would have. And that made me cry because, you know, he got so much crap for people saying, you know, he's left and all that. But the whole time he was basically here in his heart. And so I do think that we should have been on our own. We should have been making our own money. And I was saying earlier that this whole time, if we'd had our own currency, none of this would have been happening. And if we'd been able to put our oil on the market the way that Norway does, and we pick our own price to sell the oil, then we're laughing in terms of how much money we're making, you know. And I do think that Westminster's not letting us go because we are the one with the resources, just like what Yvonne was saying. But also, we need to understand that the youth is coming for Westminster, you know. Like, my niece is 21 and they are on fire, you know what I mean? Like, they're voting all the time for Scottish independence. They're not messing around. More of them want independence than the older generation that was before me. So everyone is getting chills about this right now. Like, it is the time. And thank you for that question, because I do care what the people think. That's all I think about.
I've got to say, there's a lovely bit of name dropping there. When I was
try not to name drop him, but he's
when
dead.
I was with Sean
So
Conn. We'll have Gareth, we'll have Grouse Peter on here soon. exchanging stories. He's got some crackers about Sean Connery. But that's beside the point. But I was actually thinking, Neale, I would like to give you some career advice, if I may. Now, I've heard about this job that's going, it's a piece of cake, 95 grand a year. There's a staff of about 6. How do you fancy it, mate? I mean, it doesn't seem much to it.
I don't know, to work.
That's what you do, and then be nasty to everyone and don't do anything. Kick the can down the road.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in some parallel world, I mean, I'm sure it's a job that I could do. I wonder if they'll take applications from members of the Alba party. It would certainly
rejected.
It would certainly be one way of sorting out some of the difficulties that the SNP have got. But you know, I think, you know, going back to you know, the SNP. I mean, look, I've got pals in the SNP still, and there are good people within the parliamentary teams. Not enough of them. But the reality is, what we're talking about is a very small group of people who seem to have a shared agenda that is not independence. And the more pressure that they're put under, the more that is revealed. And I think, you know, if you go back to Pete Wisher, likes to say that, oh, the Alba Party want to destroy the SNP, that's what they set out to do. No, Pete, we're established to secure Scotland's independence. That's our priority. If you get in the way of that and block it, well, that's your lookout. And if you try and downgrade independence to some form of devolution, we won't accept it. So, you know, we're not the ones that are doing anything to the SNP. It's a small group of diehards who seem to have signed up to a devolutionist proposal for the SNP in the vain hope that that would deliver continued power for them in Holyrood, when the reality is, you know, you just had to be involved in the 2014 campaign to know that that's never going to fly. You know, if you were involved in the 2014 campaign, you'll know from the passion of the people that you worked with, they would never accept that. They will, you know, and to even suggest something like that on the back of the vow that we had in 2014 as something that would be palatable for the movement is ridiculous in the extreme. So whoever gets the job of, you know, and apparently they're insisting that financial knowledge of managing budgets is an essential criteria. Well, that's a skill that I certainly have. Multi-million-pound budgets I've been responsible for. I have never lost £600,000. I have always known where the money went and what it was spent on. So if that's a qualifier, and I've never accidentally bought a camper van. So, you know, I think I'd probably be reasonably good at managing their budget. It's the governance that I would insist on that they might have some problems with, because I've always had open and transparent services when I've run them. I have always exposed in a sensitive, helpful and learning way inadequacies that we discovered as part of our service delivery. So, you know, I might be a good new broom for them, but I'm kind of otherwise occupied at the moment, Roddy. So thanks for the hint and the tip, but no, I'll decline at this time.
Just trying to help you, mate. Just trying to help you. Know. But can I just say, it's not a camper van. It was a luxury mobile home. We're talking 110 grand. Let's not demean it by calling it a camper van.
I've just ruled myself out then.
Yeah, well, I offered to do the job for nothing, but I said it would involve multiple redundancies and several deselections. Apparently, they didn't like my plan. I'm not getting interviewed. But there you go. On this, you know, this refusing we need unity. We've all said it every week. We're saying it again today. We need unity. But the Green Party, who have wrought disaster on the SNP. I mean, if you look at the problems, Eva, the biggest problems they've had have been with with Green Party ideas, GRR, the deposit return scheme, which we're going to talk a bit more in a few minutes. But that Patrick Harvey had the audacity to turn round and say he couldn't work with Alex Salmond, has a quote, he was tarnished his reputation. Yet the same Mr. Patrick Harvey can stand on a platform with John Hine, leader of the co-founder of Pi, and have no problems. They don't want to go to an all under one banner because they don't want to share a platform with either Alba or ISP because they think we're bad people. But they're happy to stand with the guy who co-founded the Pi organisation. It's quite ridiculous, and how dare he say that?
There's quite a substantial difference between the Scottish Greens as they are now and the Scottish Greens as they were at the inception of the Scottish Parliament. And they're also a very different creature from the Greens of England and Wales. Compare and contrast Caroline Lucas, Lorna Slater and Patrick Harvey. It's utterly pathetic. Now, the reason why Patrick Harvey doesn't want to stand on the stage all under one banner is not because Alex Salmond is tarnished, because Alec is not tarnished. Alec is innocent. Alec was acquitted. Alec won his case against the Scottish government and he was acquitted by a jury which was predominantly female. So Alec is an innocent man. If anybody is tarnished by their previous conduct and by the associations they have had and continue to have, it is Patrick Harvey. I can't speak much about Lorna Slater because I can't see her timeline as myself on Twitter because she, not surprisingly, blocked me when I asked her to define woman. And that's the difficulty for the Green Party. They are signally incapable of standing on a stage in front of the assembled independence movement and delivering a speech which is passionate, knowledgeable, driven and sincere without being booed off the stage by the women of Scotland and the men of Scotland who know what a woman is and who know that single-sex spaces, protections and services are jeopardised by the ideology which has captured the Green Party and the SNP. So I think that what's really wrong with Patrick is he has neither the ability nor the courage, the pure guts to get up on a stage at Bannockburn and give it laldy. Because if he did have the courage of his convictions, if he was a true independentista, he'd have jumped at the chance. You know what he is? He's the green tail wagging the yellow dog, and he's also a yellow belly. Patrick, see you at Bannockburn if you've got the cojones for it.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see him. Yvonne, I really know you'd like to talk about baby boxes, but I'm not able to do that this week. So the deposit return scheme has been postponed till 2025. Is that because it's bad legislation, or is it that the Westminster and Alistair Jack in particular are flexing their muscles and sticking the boot in to what they see as a weakened nationalist movement, or is it a bit of both?
It's because they're bloody incompetent. I mean, they really are, and this eternal cry of blaming Westminster. We know what Westminster is. We know the faults down there. But the way that the Scottish Greens, and it is the Scottish Greens, I was really sad to hear that Caroline Lucas is stepping down. She's the only Green MP in Westminster. And when you compare her to the likes of barking mad Lorna Slater and Patrick I Hate Women Harvey, Caroline Lucas is a different class, a different league. She would never have made such an almighty cock-up of this recycling scheme. It just wouldn't have happened. And you're right. Everything that's ailed the SNP has come from the Green Party. Well, if the SNP want to survive by the end of the year, and I'm not sure that they're still out of the wood yet, if they want to survive by the end of the year, They need to recycle the likes of Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater and throw them in their own bin, and because they'll never find a way out. That's the way to deal with those two. They're an absolute liability.
Yeah,
And they're not very nice people either.
No, they're not. We're running out of time. A couple of things I want to cover before we go. Marianna, Prince Harry, and I have to make a declaration. I am a Republican, a devout Republican. But I've got to say, I'm happy with what he's doing. He's suing the Mirror Group for phone hacking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, he's doing this for us all. Is this an opportunity at last to bring the UK media, which is, what is it, the 35th least trusted or, corrupt media in the world? Is this an opportunity that they can finally be brought to heel?
I think so. I think he's standing up for free speech and his own, experience of what happened. I think it's horrible what they did to him as a child. And I do think that they tapped his phone because genuinely he has the details of it. Whenever he has a voicemail on his phone, it reads that it's been read already and it's been heard already. And so he's never looked on his phone and seen all these unheard, messages like we all have. He's just been tapped his whole life, basically. And I think this is free speech at work. I love a free press, but this is not a free press. When you're hurting a wee boy who's lost his mum and who is in a unique situation, and you ruin his life, I don't think that's a free press. I think that's abuse of power and an abuse of basically a child. So I think it's great that he's speaking up. I think everyone's freaking out about it because nobody's done this before. And I think there's something unique about that as well. I love a challenger. I love someone who comes out and tries to do something different. So,
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised, of course, though, if there's gutter press don't try and attack Harry via his wife, because she seems to be an easy target for them, because how dare she not be white Anglo-Saxon? It's just pure racism. But I hope we're right, and I hope it is coming. I just want to finish off with one last question. There's been a lot of talk recently on GRR and one thing or another, and some outcry about the drag queens going into schools to talk to children, to read books to children. I just wondered, Neale, why don't the drag queens go into old folks' homes and do some reading to the old folks in their home?
Exactly.
Why would that be?
Well, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Look, what is it? What is it that this gender ideology has? And what is the fascination that they have with children? They are seeking to put children on lifelong medical treatments and subject them to horrific, life-changing surgeries at a time when they simply don't have the capacity or the ability or the information, often because they're denied that when the decision's been forced upon them. So the ethics of it are completely skewed. But just, let's take the drag queen out of it for a wee second and say, well, why don't we get strippers to come in and read stories to children? And the strippers can do a little bit of sex education while they're there. There's a stripper, so that seems sensible. They must know about sex education. And the reality is we don't do that. It's because it's daft. And drag queens are not qualified teachers. They are certainly not qualified people to come in and educate children about sexual issues at a very young age, as young as 6. And I took the extraordinary position, and it is an extraordinary position for me, of defending Douglas Ross on drive time at the end of the interview, because there was this drag queen came on, or drag artist came on, attacking him with the most vapid nonsense of why it's acceptable to bring sexualized language and behavior into a child's classroom. And there is no good reason for that. No excuse, no good reason. What exactly are they going to impart that can't be dealt with professionally by a parent or by a teacher? I think, I am deeply concerned about the range of different problems that I'm picking up in Scottish civil and society and public bodies, where sexualized behavior and language has been pushed on children. And, and I've made this point many times before, and Eva will understand this, very clearly from a legal point of view. But one of the key indicators when you're dealing with a child where you can pick up safeguarding concerns is the use of sexualized language or the mimicking sexualized behavior. And it's such an important red flag because the child doesn't realize that this is unusual because it's part of their world. And so they'll say and do things that you can see that they've been exposed to inappropriate behavior. And if we begin to introduce that type of language and behaviors because they want to use various different things to demonstrate various sexual acts, then you remove or camouflage those very red flags that you depend upon to pick up child sexual exploitation. So I'm deeply concerned about this. I'm deeply concerned about what's been happening in LGBT Youth Scotland. I wrote to their chief executive at the beginning of February. I have still to receive a reply. I'm very concerned about everything that's been happening in the Children's Hearing Service, and I want, like Eva, to see the recent report into that service implemented fully. But I want to see the panel members being supported properly, not being silenced and isolated as the current leadership of Children's Hearing Scotland want to do. So there are lots of profound problems with this. And I think drag queen storytime is just a symptom of a much greater problem, and it needs to be named and it needs to be tackled, because that's how you deal with child safeguarding issues. You call it out and you investigate. And the fact that the Scottish Government are resisting every single indicator that there is a problem is also deeply worrying.
I remember my days of being 13, 14 at school, and I don't think it's such a daft idea. If strippers had been coming to my school, I would have certainly turned up for that class. I wouldn't have been playing snooker as much as I used to, that's for sure.
But on that point, I mean, that's a really good point, Roddy, because the drag queen was supposing that any gay kid in the class would be delighted to have a drag queen come in and to give them this role model. If a drag queen had come in as a young gay guy, if a drag queen had come into my school, it would have pushed me so far into the closet, because I would have said, well, that's no me. Because it's not. And this idea that gay people are somehow cross-dressers or drag queens is so ridiculous and quite insulting, frankly. There's no place for it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Adult entertainers belong in pubs, not in schools.
Correct, absolutely, absolutely. Well, of course, we've overrun as always, folks. Run out of time and not run out of topics, but we've just run out of time as usual. Can I thank you all for being here, and especially to you, Marianna, for your debut with us, and your name dropping and making us all feel sort of. I wish I knew someone like Sean Connery. And remember that offer I've made to star in your next movie. I'm available, and I'm cheap. I'm very cheap. Guys, thank you very much.
I'm putting you all in the next film. That's it.
There we go. Good.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could say something, but I won't be in trouble again. Anyway, until we see you all again, viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have. Keep the faith, keep at it. Our day's coming. Our day's coming.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. I'll see you soon. Take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.